Well, as we just heard there from Ed, G7 leaders will be meeting in Hiroshima through Sunday. A couple of key issues. Ed mentioned China. Russia is also on the docket as it recently launched some fresh aerial assaults on Ukraine. But we want to take a closer look now at some of the issues with our guest, Dr. Ariel Cohen. He is Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Dr. Cohen, thanks for being with us. Let's begin with the China angle first, because it's curious. As the G7 meets, Xi Jinping is hosting a summit of 5 former Soviet republics in Central Asia that he's hoping to kind of develop deeper relationships with. Is the G7 meeting really about looking for ways to contain China?
Well, unfortunately, these days it's China and Russia. And Central Asian republics used to be in the Soviet and before that Russian imperial sphere. They're independent since 1991. And I must say, while the U.S. is trying to pay attention to the Indo-Pacific realm from India to Australia to Japan, despite the fact that this Quad summit got canceled by Biden, in Central Asia, U.S. is neglecting a vital strategic area. U.S. president never visited the soft belly of China, bordering Russia, a strategic region in the heart of Eurasia.
Yeah, this is Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. Yeah, the stans
Absolutely.
there. There's a lot of natural resources in these countries. When I think of Kazakhstan, there's natural gas, there's oil there.
Oil, right.
So,
and a lot of gas in Turkmenistan. And Kazakhstan is the number one supplier of the uranium ore to the global market. Nothing more important than that.
So what does the G7 need to be doing to kind of bring this into their sphere of consciousness, if that's a way of even describing it, and putting more focus here away from the issue, let's say, of the East as it relates to, you know, China's kind of geography and the issue of Taiwan?
The immediate pressure is how to route the exports and the traffic away from Russia. Kazakhstan is exporting 80% of its oil via a Russian pipeline called Caspian Pipeline Consortium to the Black Sea. Now they want to export it across the Caspian Sea to Azerbaijan and Turkey and to the markets. But also, Europe needs to replace Russian gas. Turkmenistan has a lot of gas. And to entice Turkmenistan to sell at least some of its gas via Azerbaijan to Europe would be another challenge. Furthermore, to put more pressure, as Prime Minister Sunak suggested, to put more pressure on Brazil and India not to cooperate with Russia, not to provide the necessary cash flows to subsidize the war in Ukraine. That's another challenge. And together with India, together with Australia and Japan, to focus on the Indo-Pacific area, to generate some kind of a modus vivendi in which China scales down its ambition, clearly says that it abides by earlier agreements not to invade Taiwan in exchange for one China policy. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we need our allies to build our deterrence in the Indo-Pacific area.
Well, you mentioned war in Ukraine, and I'm wondering from your point of view what the G7 can be doing to kind of give Ukraine even greater support. Are you optimistic that that could happen, and maybe there's a resolution to this conflict?
We don't see a resolution yet, although both the Russians and the Ukrainians are talking to the Chinese envoy, and also the Holy See, the Pope, sent his envoy to talk to the both parties. So some kind of conversation is going on. Everybody's waiting, of course, to the long-promised Ukrainian counter-offensive. Everybody's pretty optimistic that Ukraine will be successful. However, going beyond that, I think the main lesson for all the G7 and beyond, Japan, Australia, etc., is how poorly our military supply chain worked. A relatively limited regional war in Europe managed to empty our arsenals and the arsenals of our allies. Germany, for example, for years was way below the NATO target of 2% of the GDP for the military, and they're still not there. So everybody needs to chip in. Everybody needs to re-examine their supply chains and their military production. Unfortunately, this world demonstrated that with Russia and China trying to fundamentally change the global order, the best way to avoid the war is to deter it.
All right. Dr. Cohen, thank you so much for being with us. Ariel Cohen, Senior Fellow of the Atlantic Council, joining us here on DBA.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to get more content like this.